Right. We're talking today with Mr. Morris Hinken of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Hinken, can you start with some background on yourself? To begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Ottawa County in Ellendale. That's
Okay.
where our home was, a farm was.
And what year?
1922. So you can tell how old I am right there.
And did you grow up living on that farm?
I grew up living on that farm until I started working at the telephone company, Michigan Bell.
And what year was that?
Oh, that would be 18 years after 1922, so.
1940. Okay. So you did go all the way through high school then?
I only went 2 years of high school.
Okay. And so then what did you do between leaving high school and starting up with the phone company?
I worked on the farm.
And what were you growing on the farm?
Oh, just general things. It was a dairy farm, so
Okay.
we grew a lot of stuff for feeding the cows and horses and what have you.
Okay. And where was that farm relative to the current Grand Valley campus?
Oh, it's a half a mile west, right on the corner there.
Okay. So off of what's now Lake Michigan Drive.
Right, corner, 52nd on Lake Michigan Drive.
Okay.
It's all gone now. A few banks on it and you name it.
Yep. Okay. Now, how many kids were in your family?
You wouldn't believe this probably, but 12.
And where did you come in line?
I'm third from the bottom,
Okay.
but I'm the only one out of that 12 that's living yet. I'm the only one. And I always say, my brothers and sisters are all in heaven, and they're all saying, what takes that guy so long?
All right. Describe a little bit what your first job was with a phone company.
Oh, that first job was I was on a line crew, and that's when you were setting a lot of poles in those days and stringing wire. Of course, now they don't do that, but that was our job. And I see these guys out there working nowadays outside, and I said, oh, I used to do that and I like it outside. Boy, I wouldn't do it now. I didn't mind working outside.
All right.
And when it rained, we'd have time off. We could sleep or whatever we could do.
All right. Now, before Pearl Harbor happened, were you paying much attention to what was going on in the world? Or were you just worrying about your own job and family and stuff?
When I was on the farm then, farmers get together on a farm and and there was a Jack Atkins there, and he says to us guys, we were having coffee one time, he says, you guys are all going to be in the Army one of these days because Japan, Germany, and Italy are going to get together. And they're going to think they're going to rule the world, I guess. But that would happen too, just like he said. And I think that's the only thing I can remember about that,
Okay.
being in trouble.
Now, do you remember how you heard about Pearl Harbor?
We heard about that. We had an evening service at church at Sunday. And of course, nobody had television, probably not too many radios either, so a lot of people didn't hear about it. So the pastor announced it that night. That's what we heard about it.
All right. Now, at the time you heard about it, did you consider going and enlisting, or what was your attitude at that point?
Not really, because I guess at that time I didn't see the whole picture yet, like I did later.
Okay. Now, there was already a draft that started up even before Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
So you were aware of that, and that they might call you at some point?
Oh, yeah, I was aware of it. Because I had a Sunday school teacher, and we had, 6, 7 boys in there all my age. And he pointed to us and he said, oh, you're not too long, you're going to be in the Army. And it was true, too.
Mm-hmm.
All came true.
All right. And then how was it that you joined the Army?
I was drafted.
Okay. And when were you drafted?
Oh, 1942.
Mm-hmm.
I got my little draft notice from the government, and had to appear in Grand Haven, all that stuff.
Okay. So describe a little bit the process, the induction process, and getting you launched for training. You said you go to Grand Haven, and then what?
Went to Grand Haven. I think we went to Lansing and had our physicals. And then we came back on the bus. Then it was a few days before we had a report to Grand Haven to leave on the bus to go to Camp Custer.
Okay, so we got to Fort Custer, Battle Creek.
Fort Custer, yeah.
Okay, and I think on your service record it indicated that was about the 12th of December of 42 when you did that.
Yeah, that's probably right.
All right. Okay. What did they do with you when you got to Fort Custer?
Oh, wow. They went through the whole list of things. They issued us all uniforms, and all new stuff. And what else did they do? Oh, they gave us a little training tour to start with. And of course, one of the big things was over there peeling potatoes. They put us in there to do all this stuff and do a lot of chores already when we got there.
How long did you stay there?
Oh, we left there, I think it's just before Christmas. No,
Okay.
it was just a little after Christmas, and they sent us to Camp Crowder, Missouri,
All right. How did they get you down to Camp Crowder?
with a bus from Grand Haven.
Okay.
Buses.
So bus ride late December, what was that like?
Well, the weather wasn't all that great, I remember that. But it's kind of solemn, when you're leaving home. You don't know, really. You're going to see your folks again, your friends, your girlfriends, or family, or even your country, or if you go overseas, you're ever going to see those again. That's kind of solemn. It is.
Do you have an idea of how long it took to get down there?
Oh, probably 2 hours maybe, that you can do
Oh.
that. Oh, to Camp Crowder.
To Camp Crowder, yeah.
Oh, I don't know exactly, but they put us on a train. It went pretty
Oh, okay.
fast.
That part was a train. So the bus was down to Fort Custer, and then the train out to
was
Camp Crowder.
trains were to Camp Crowder, Missouri.
Had you taken a long train ride before that?
I never was on a train. In fact, I can't remember even being out of the state before that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall when I was young. I don't remember being out of the state. So
Well, that was true for a lot of men.
It was.
Never had reason to go. All right. What was Camp Crowder like?
Oh, it was a brand new camp because it was built right after, I think, Pearl Harbor. I don't know if it was, but it was all new. But a lot of work hadn't been done yet, like the roads in between all the nice new barracks wasn't completed yet. And they finally finished all that too. But at Camp Crowder too, they even had to expand their camp. And what they did, they built these little, what do you call them, little huts. And they put tar paper on them and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And we always called that the tar paper shacks.
Right.
That's what they were.
Well, that's pretty much what they were.
They were.
Yeah, so wood frames and tar
Yeah.
paper and that kind of thing.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Now, did Camp Crowder have a special function? Were there certain kinds of training they did there?
Yeah. It's all Signal Corps.
Okay.
And then not only Signal Corps, signal like telephones and all that stuff, radio, but it also had a pigeon, homing pigeons training. They raised a lot of those. And every once in a while, and they was close to us too, that outfit. Every once in a while you could a pigeon would come back with something tied on its leg, I think. That was the note, and that were they training. I don't know where they let that pigeon out, maybe a long way, but he'd come back home. And that was interesting. And they also had a lot of wax over there, training a lot of wax. I guess that was about it there.
Okay. Now, did they keep the wax separate from the rest of you?
Yeah, they had their own little end of the camp over there.
Okay. Now, did they do the regular kind of boot camp marching drill and follow orders?
Oh, yeah, we went through all of that. Oh, yeah. What the nice part of it was when we got to the end of that, then we had to go out to the rifle range. That was fun. It was fun, and they pulled a lot of jokes out there, too. They wanted your whole outfit to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
So they had all these targets out there, and you knew who was shooting. And if he got one way off to the side, we'd pull the thing down and poke a pencil through it and put it back up. And those guys all qualified.
Okay. Now, had you done some hunting or shooting out in the farm?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, we used to rabbit hunt pheasant. We had a lot of that over there. Now it's all gone.
Yeah. And I guess, were you in good physical shape at that point?
Oh, yeah, I was in good physical.
Did you have any trouble adjusting to military discipline?
Not really.
Okay. Now, were there some of the guys around you who were having a harder time with that kind of boot camp training?
Oh yeah, some of them they weren't physically, and then we'd go on these marches at night. They always had an ambulance following us, and they'd fall out probably a couple of miles down the road already, and then they had to carry them all the way back. But we went on some long hikes. One of them was 22 miles one night. We got back the next morning. I hope they let us go to bed. I can't remember that, but we should have. But a lot of those guys wouldn't make that. No
Okay.
way.
Now, what kind of people were training alongside you? Were they from all over the country, or mostly Midwesterners, or?
Tell you what, we had a lot of Southerners from Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. Let's see, we even had a few from Florida, but they must have pulled those out of there at one time. They needed them, and so they took this whole group because they probably had a supply of them. So in our outfit, we had them scattered all over. Not too many from Michigan, but we had a lot of them Southerners down there. And first I couldn't understand them, you know.
Now, were there a lot of them, were they men like you who had at least a little bit of experience with things like phone lines or communications equipment?
No, just a few. And we were picked, I think, because we had that to send them down there. And there was some of the officers came from the States. They were up higher a little bit. And yeah, we had a few.
Okay.
But some of them, I have to say this, I think some of those from Georgia, especially, or Mississippi, they never had a telephone in their house or anything. If they wanted to call, they had to go to the store on the corner over there.
Yeah.
And so that's how much they were introduced to these telephones and so on, and the radios and what have you. But they did a good job.
Were they reasonably smart guys? I mean, could they learn quickly, or?
I can't remember. They were probably average, yeah,
Okay.
I suppose so.
All right. Now, how long did the boot camp part last? Just the physical training part?
Probably a month or two, maybe.
Okay.
We
And then,
got all our training in. We know how to march, turn left, and all that. So I like that. I tell you what, I was 6'2" at that time, I think, and I was next to the tallest one in our outfit. Can you imagine that? They're all taller now. And then I got to be a right guide, and that's the one that you better follow him because he knows what he's doing. I thought anyway.
all right. So you get through that. Now, after you do that sort of basic training stuff, now do they train you in the communication stuff?
Oh yeah, then we got into switchboards and all that stuff right there, and we went through all those courses too.
Okay. Now, how much of a range of equipment or jobs were you trained for?
I was trained all the way from on telephone all the way into switchboards, and even got into some radio.
And did you learn code? Was that part of it, or just
No,
the
we did
mechanics of it?
The other end, that little cardboard shacks over there, they were learning Morse code and all that stuff. And it's so funny. I had a good friend who lived next door to me at home, and he was in the 113th Intelligence. And he was over there in that shack too, and I got together. And lo and behold, we were in France, and I saw a sign, a truck, 113th Signal Battalion. I thought, oh, Gerald Dyke is in that outfit. Lo and behold, we got up to the corner, and that outfit went by, and he was hanging on on the back of the truck with his feet dangling, you know. And I hollered at him, and he caught on. And I said, "Where are you going?" And he told me, but I never had a chance to go there to get him. But I was so close.
All right. Let's see. Now, did you have a primary assignment that you were trained for, or one thing that you were expected to do a lot of?
Well, I think stringing wire lines on cross arms, you know, how they used to with all the glass on it and so on.
Yep.
That was popular in those days. And we did a lot of that.
Okay.
We used it too when we were over in France too. Then we used a lot of that.
Right. Now, about how long did you spend training at Camp Crowder once you finished with the basic training?
Well, we left there probably November probably of '43. So I was there up until November of '43.
Okay, so you've got probably 7, 8 months worth
Yeah,
of
we
training
did.
at that point. Now, were you training as part of a specific unit at that point?
Yeah, we had our own outfits, and we kept our own units. Well, then you could figure out what the next guy was
Right.
going to do, and unless you get new people in
Okay.
there.
So what was your unit that you were serving in? What battalion were you in?
I was in the 32nd Signal Battalion. We were attached to 1st Army, but we were not attached to anybody else's unit, so
Right.
we were sort of a floater. Where they needed us, they could call us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it was up on the beach too. We were divided into 10 units in, and for 10 days they'd always send another unit in to contact that other one, and if the other one wasn't there, they could start over.
Mm-hmm.
But the first units, I think most of them survived even out of that first one.
Okay.
And
All
that
right.
was
So
good.
basically, you train with a group of men, and so you're with a kind of a given unit within the battalion, and so you're going to train together and ship out together and
Oh
so
yeah,
forth.
we did.
Okay.
We did.
Now, did you get to go off the base much at all when you're out there in
Oh
Missouri?
yeah, you could do that.
And what was there to do if you went in town or anything?
Well, we always went, I liked to bowl, and we'd always go to Joplin to bowl when we could. There was 4 guys of us, and we'd always head for Joplin, go bowling, and sometimes the bowling alleys were full, and maybe you couldn't go bowling, but we liked to do that. Otherwise, there wasn't much to do.
Would some guys go in and go to church or that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, but we had also our own chapels on camp base too, so you could go. That's where I normally went.
Okay. All right. Now, did you get a chance to go home before they ship you overseas?
I did. I went home, let's see, probably in November. I probably went home for a furlough.
So right before they ship you overseas?
Yeah.
Okay.
I went home for probably 10 days, 2 weeks. I can't remember what it was. But I know when I got home, it was snow high up. November snow, man. I was home in a little while in November too before I had to go back. And one reason I was there at that time, my brother-in-law and my sister were going to get married. It was going to be a military funeral.
Wedding, rather.
Military. Okay, you
It's
know
only
what
a
I mean?
funeral if the wedding thing doesn't work out.
The wedding, yeah. But anyway, then I stayed home for that. Then I had to go ship back to Camp Crowder. And then we were off. We were off. I'm going to have to take a little slug of this. My throat is a little dry. Okay.
All right. Now, where did you ship out from? What port did you leave?
We went to Camp Shanks, New York.
Okay.
And that was a big camp because all the outfits were shipping out from there.
Right. What kind of ship did they put you on?
Not a very good. It was under small, all Liberty ships, they called them. Man, they had a lot of them. And that's what we went on. And then we went, when we left there, I always thought I could just barely see, I thought, the Statue of Liberty. And then I get to thinking, oh, am I ever going to see home again? Am I ever going to see anybody? So as we're headed out, you don't know where you're going to go to.
Right. Now, what was the trip over like?
Oh, that was a terrible trip. Stormy, you know. Oh, that boat waking all the time, up and down. I always thought, boy, if you couldn't stab good, they had all these trays, you know, that you put your food on once. And the floor was so sloppy because there was more food on it. And it wasn't very good, but I always said you better have a fork, and when your food comes by, you better stab it, because otherwise some other guy down the line there, he's going to get it. So, no, that wasn't very good.
Did a lot of men get sick?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I did myself.
Did you get used to it after a while, or just stay sick the whole time?
Well, I stayed sick the whole time. I started out good. I probably was there for quite a while before I got sick, and boy, I couldn't do nothing about it either. And my bunk was on a hatch where the doors went up, you know, and those sailors were always having it open, and the wind and the wet would come in there. And I got so sick that they put me in the hospital when I got to Liverpool. And I got over it fairly soon, but this hospital I was in was an English hospital. It was a small one, and I don't know, it was out of country where, but they operated different there. If you were able to get up, then you had to do all the sweeping of the floors and all the chores too. And they'd bring your food in, and you had to wash all the dishes, so when they shipped them back, they were all clean. So we had to do that. But I was there with two Scottish soldiers. They were in the English Army, of course, and they were friends, I guess. They talked like that too. But anyway, those guys didn't want to go back to their units. I wanted to go back to my unit because I didn't want to start out on a new one. But those guys found out that if you put a big slice of lye soap under each armpit, bring your temperature right up. Every time that doctor came through in the morning, he'd check them. He'd, oh man, he says, I'm gonna have to leave you here for another day or two. So those guys stayed, and that's all it was. They put that GI soap under their armpits.
But you were able to rejoin your battalion then.
Yeah, I don't know how they even found our battalion because it was a long way away. But I guess they knew where it was, and I don't know how all these communications worked like that.
Okay.
But,
Now, do you know what part of England you were based in then?
yeah, near Coventry,
Okay.
not too far from Coventry.
All right. And then what kind of facility did you have there?
These paper shacks, these little Quonset huts, you know. Well, they weren't bad. Hey,
Okay.
kept you out of the weather and
Now,
everything.
were you continuing to train or just waiting for things to happen?
We did a little bit of training just to keep sharp, but nothing real
Yeah.
exciting or anything.
So how did you spend most of your time?
Well, we got a lot of time off because what you're going to do. And a friend of mine, we did a lot of scouring around the country, take up some road where we go. And one time we got up over a little hill like that, and there was all these fences, pillars, two big police dogs on the other side. And we said, we backed out of there. We didn't want to have a contest with those police dogs. But we did a lot of that. There was lots of stuff to see there. Yeah.
Now, did you go into London at all?
No, didn't go any. I didn't go into London. Coventry, I guess that was the biggest one.
Okay. Now, Coventry had been bombed pretty
Oh,
badly by the
yeah,
Germans.
it was. It was bad.
And could you still see signs of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could see sign. Well, that, they was doing that just before we got there yet. As soon as Germany was coming over yet, dropping all those bombs on it. But then the English, they had something like, let's see, what was I going to say that? Radar. They had the radar, but Germany didn't have it at that time. And those little fighter pilots there with those little Spitfires in England, they knew where them Germans were going to be over the North Sea.
Right,
And
yeah.
they'd send them up there.
And that was back in 1940. And part of why the Germans started bombing cities at night was they couldn't fly by day anymore.
Oh,
So they went for big targets. Yeah.
No, that's,
But that, you can still see signs of that even
Right,
several years
Coventry, yeah.
after the original event. Okay. So you're in there, let's see, it's about 6 months or whatever till D-Day. Did you get there after Christmas or before Christmas, or do you not recall?
let's see, how did we spend Christmas then?
Because it could have been on the boat.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Christmas. You got me there. I can't really recall when that was.
Okay. Are there other particular things that happened or that you remember about that stay in England? Just individual incidents or things like that?
Well, one thing I can remember, we always went into town where we were stationed. There was a little town of Atherstone. It wasn't a very big town. And we'd go in there at night because we could play darts in there, you know, on there, in the taverns and so on. And one thing they did, they served lots of fish and chips. I mean, real good stuff, but they always wrapped them in newspaper. That's the only paper they had. And if they run out of paper, they just lock the place up. What are you going to do? You can't put them in their hand very well. Right. I remember that. And they were good too, fish and chips.
Okay.
And then, let's see, from there, after Atherstone, where did we go? It was probably pretty quick when we left.
Did you go to a staging area of some kind before the before the trip to Normandy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You know, they had a staging area. It was, we went to Southampton. That's where we were going to leave from. And it was so stormy at that time. It was right after D-Day. And that we could hardly get out there. And that docks would go up and down. We were trying to load all our trucks and Jeeps and everything on there.
What do you remember? What kind of ship you were loading on? I mean, were you going on
It was
an LST
an English,
or
an English, let's see, what would I call that English? Anyway, it had 2 ramps in the front. So
kind of like a ferry or something that could?
that was a British ship.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was. And it was an English ship. And those English, they gave us a bunch of instructions, and they gave us some big pills, and one to go over there, and one just before you land, because they always said you're going to need it. So we had those pills, and I took them too. And they really helped me. I don't know what the other guys did, but they weren't. I think when we landed, we didn't know what we were getting into. I think that's probably what kept us going, because if we knew what we was going to get into, it wouldn't have been all that great to land. But we landed about 9 days later after D-Day. But when we were at Southampton, we could tell that D-Day was there, because these planes started coming back with a motor burning, you know, or something. So we know this is a landing now today. So then
What news did you have about what was happening over there before you got there? And did you know anything about the D-Day landings or anything else like that?
We didn't know anything of that.
Did you know where you were going?
Well, yeah, we knew. I guess when they locked everything up, you know, and everything is tied down, chained down, and I thought, well, we'll be leaving pretty quick, and we did too. And we had an officer in our outfit, first lieutenant, and he was always bragging. He said, I'm going to be the first one to land on Omaha Beach of our outfits. So that was what he always bragged about. But what happened, they put these big 2, whatchamacallits, down on the beach out of the ship, you know, these ramps. And we were okay. We were on hard sand, fairly hard, but it was wet. They had been disturbed, so it was loose. And he went down right away. He was supposed to be the first one on the beach. So he got kidded for that. They had to take a little bulldozer and get a hold of him and kind of tug that thing out of there. But I heard, I never saw it, but these big trucks would get stuck in there with a load of stuff, you know, it's hard to ever get them out. They'd just pull on them, and some of them would just take the front end or the front wheels and stuff and take those out, but the rest, they couldn't do anything about it. It's loaded down.
Okay. Now, what did Omaha Beach look like to you when you got there?
It was peaceful, but it was lots of equipment being loaded and unloaded. And they had all the, what do I say, aerial, you know what I mean.
Barrage balloons?
Yeah, balloons, yeah.
Okay.
All on them big cables, you know. And look up and see all those. But that kept the fighters, German, they couldn't get in close, you know, because they hit one of them, so they stayed away.
Now, when you came on, were they loading wounded men and things like that, sending them the other way?
Yeah, they were. In fact, down the road just a while, you could see a Red Cross tent there. And I suppose that was wounded. And they had ships there too, and I suppose they were taking them back to England.
Okay. Now, once your unit unloads onto the beach, then what happens next?
Then we went, we had to go up grade, you know, for quite a ways. And engineers had these bulldozers, and they made this in these draws, you know, they made nice little roads. They packed them down good. And we had to get to that top. We were supposed to meet there at a certain place. But what we had before we loaded on the ship, we put all this gook on the motor, you know, so we could go through water. It wouldn't bother. And the guys forgot to take that off when they got up there. And we get halfway up the hill, or just about the top, and those trucks were hotter, you know. Had all this gook on it. We had to stop, pull all that off, and I tell you, I always say, Murphy's Law went into effect because everything we touched after that was wrong.
All right. Now, once you clean up the motors and can move, then what are you doing?
Then we got to the top, but then it was getting dusk already because we were so late. I guess we didn't. And then some of the officers were up there. But a lot of them had gone on ahead, and we get up there. Who knows? We don't have a roads or anything. But we did find the unit that night. We kept on going. And then we stayed there in a little depression, a long one. And we figured we could see this coffee containers or these little cups. We could see them, and then I thought, oh, Americans have been here, because that was what they were drinking. Yeah, so that's where we got together. It was a little rough, but no fire, no arms, like that.
Now, then they eventually put you to work, though. You have a job to do.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what are you doing?
we had to get organized again because some of the units didn't show up because we didn't know where they were. So we kind of got organized. And then my best friend, I went through the whole Army with my best friend, Peterson. We got on the beach. We got off the beach at the top, but we never saw him again. Never. And I had people looking for him. I went through all the registers where he could have been, back at his home in a hospital. Where did that guy show up? He's not even listed in the cemetery that he ever found his we call them dog tags, but they're...
So he just disappeared?
He disappeared. And I looked for that guy. I went to San Diego, or near there, where he lived. Called out of Peterson's. You know any of this family? No, none of them knew anything about him. And the hospital in Long Beach, too, where he would have landed, been in the hospital if he came home, they had no record of him. So he disappeared over there. We had a speaker over at where we live over there, Covenant Village. And she said later, she was speaking about all this stuff, and she said later, if any of you fellas want to know if a friend of yours you don't know about, if he came back or not, let me know, I'll find him for you. She never came back, so apparently she never found him. That's so funny. I kind of missed him, because I could have really enjoyed him. He had a squad just like I did, so.
Okay, so you were at this point leading a squad. You were a corporal or sergeant by this time?
I was probably a sergeant, probably a tech sergeant or something like that. So I would have had a squad, yeah.
Okay. And then once they sort out the unit and get you guys organized, then what do they have you do?
Oh, we were supposed to, first thing we did, we had to tie Omaha Beach with Utah Beach. But that was rough too, because there was a waterway that came between them, We had to go around that, And some of the guys had to get another Army unit and tie it to somewhere else. We had all kinds of orders. They wanted big cable too. They didn't want little one-liner or anything like that. So that's what we did for quite a while there.
What did the French countryside around there look like?
Much like here where we were, yeah. Much like, but the one thing I always noticed, all their cows were red and white. Never saw black and white.
All right. Did you know much about what was actually happening in terms of the fighting, or did you just stay focused on what you were doing?
No, that was a few miles up ahead. And no, we didn't know too much about it. We'd get close to it, In fact, sometimes we'd get too close. They'd send us back, what are you doing here? Especially when we went to Cherbourg. We went up there. We were to rehabilitate a French line going up there. And we did that too, but we had to climb a lot of poles because things were broke off. And when we get there, there's always signs there. This side road has not been cleared of mines, but that's where we had to work. Well, it's not been cleared. I hope there wasn't any there. We didn't have any accidents or so incidents.
Okay. Yeah, what kind of condition was Cherbourg in?
I didn't really get into town. Okay. Got up to the edge, and then when we went back, this guys there took care of everything.
All right.
But I heard it was a little bit destroyed too.
Yeah, I mean that was the Germans defended that. There was kind of a siege there for a while.
It was a nice port.
All right.
It was.
Did you see much at all of the French civilians as you were out there working in the countryside?
Oh yeah, they were out there working. They're plowing the fields, and in fact, that one there had there was a gal out there. She had a tractor, and she could pull that up to a milker out in the field there, and she'd turn that milker on, and she'd milk a little herd of cows. And then there's other guys, they were doing other things out in the field. Well,
And did you have much contact with them or just saw them out there doing their jobs?
no, we didn't. We probably did a few things, signal with them, I don't know, but we couldn't understand anybody. I didn't
Right.
know a word of French, nothing.
Okay. Now, did you see, what signs did you get that there was, a war going on? Were there military aircraft going over or lots of vehicles going through? Or?
Oh yeah, they had these supply rigs, trucks, and they had a red ball on them, and it was a Red Ball Express. You better get out of the way. I got there right away. They did too, and they hauled lots of stuff.
Now, did they have black drivers at that point? Because later on, that Red Ball Express.
No, I don't think they did at that point. Well, they could have. I didn't see any.
Yeah, but a little later on, as they were moving farther across France, a lot of them were driven by black units at that point. Okay. Now, do you get to a point while you're there? In Normandy, the Allied armies are stalled for a while. They're there for a couple of months before they get out.
St. Lo.
Yeah, and you kind of go through all that. Was there a point when you would kind of run out of stuff to do, or were you busy really the whole time until the breakout?
I don't know. I think we were busy most of the time. I think there was a time we could lay around. But we were headed for St. Lo, and it took us 20 days, I think, from where we were to go to St. Lo. 20 days, 20 miles. 20 miles in.
Yeah.
And it took us 40 days to get there.
Right.
That's half a...
Now, did you have to start rebuilding the communication net through St. Lo when they did that?
Well, right after that, that was a nice highways through there. They had to get those in order to get to where they went. So that's why they had to have St. Lo. But when we got up to St. Lo, we got through it. But by the time we got there, the city was flat. It was flat. I mean, couldn't see anything. A few walls sticking up here and there. And then we went, and we took a trip back there later on. We went to St. Lo. Oh, beautiful city. Of course, we paid for a lot of that, I think.
Right. Now, they had done massive bombing at St. Lo. Did you see the planes going over when that happened?
No, they were a little bit ahead of us yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they had a lot of casualties there because the planes were not bombing where they should have been. They were hitting a lot of American troops. And for what reason, I did know, but right now I can't recall why that was.
Well, mostly they hadn't practiced that kind of thing very much. And
Probably did.
They got better later. But
Probably
after that happened, not too long after that, the Americans do break out, and now they're starting to move across northern France fairly quickly. Now, did you now switch over to having to kind of change places from day to day and follow them, or what did you do?
Yeah, we followed them. I can't remember how just all that went, how far back we were or anything. But I know they moved. Once Patton got over there, they moved. They moved. And we finally got up to, there might be a spade in there, but we got to Versailles.
Yeah.
Where World War I peace treaty was signed, and they had
so
all
outside
of
of Paris,
Louis XIV built this big thing. We were supposed to go to Versailles, or we did.
Yeah.
And then all the rumors got started right away. Hey, we're going to Versailles. Germany surrendered. They're going to sign a new treaty. Same place in World War I. But it never happened. We got there. We did get there. We got rendezvous to the rest. But it was so wet and rainy, and all these trucks up on the lawns, make a little bivouac, and ruts down in there. Oh, I felt so bad, but what are you going to do? It was raining and mud. We had to move, so there's where we stayed, and that was bad.
But then, did they keep you moving? I mean, did you stay at Versailles for a while, or did you move past it?
We rendezvoused with our outfits, and that's was not too long after that. Then we left for Paris, and we went through Paris, and it seemed like we went through at night. And it was so funny. Go on, and had these stores, at night, and had the displays in the window, all these fancy stuff, dresses and everything. And here we're over here dragging ourselves along. I thought, what happened to that city? But it was blacked out, and I don't know why it was blacked out, because, hey, there wasn't too many planes around there anymore. But that's.
But you kind of drove through Paris rather than stopping.
Yeah, we didn't stop. We would go through the edge of it at night.
Right. Now, do you know what sector you went to? You get past Paris, you keep going east. Do you go into Belgium, or do you?
Oh, yeah. First we hit Luxembourg, that little country there.
Right.
And we stayed there. I remember staying there in Luxembourg. We stayed over there one night. We found this little place to stay, and it was a schoolroom. And there must have been quite a few kids, but they had all these little toy German everything in there. And right next to it was a slaughterhouse. I mean, building, slaughterhouse on one time, school on the other. We stayed in the school, but I thought, that sounded funny, a slaughterhouse and a school next to each other. But that's what it was.
All right. And then you kind of go through Luxembourg, then do you get to a point where you stop for a while?
Probably Belgium. But then towards the fall, before winter, everything shut down. We weren't going to do any more because the winter set in. The Germans weren't going to do anything. The Americans weren't going to do anything. But the Americans didn't know the Germans were doing something. And one of our outfit guys, he had a friend there, and he says, I told them there was something happening. I was on a patrol one night, and I could hear motors that I never heard before, and they were heavy motors. And these were these big Tiger tanks up there, lining up or whatever they were doing. And he told the officers, we better investigate this, what them big things are. But the American officers wouldn't even do it. They just figured we're going to set for the winter. But that didn't happen.
Now, do you know roughly where you were when the Germans attacked in the Battle of the Bulge?
I was in Bastogne, and then we came back out. That was a couple of days before that already. And we went to Liège. It was a little town. No, it was not that. That was St. Vith. And that was a little town, but it didn't have any importance because there was no roads that they needed, so they just left us over there. But we knew what was going on. Everything else was surrounded all the way to Bastogne and back again.
Well, St. Vith was in the middle of a pretty big attack.
Yeah,
that was.
But it really didn't amount to nothing for them because they wanted to push on.
Yeah, but it was a place where there was a big fight, and eventually the Americans were pushed out of it. So you couldn't have stayed there too long.
No, I can't remember. Everything went so fast then.
Were you still kind of driving around, putting up lines or fixing things at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's why I was in Bastogne ahead of time, our outfit.
Okay.
We were there I remember going up in the tower in Bastogne, in the center of the city. And they had this big, I don't know how many stories, a telephone exchange up there. And then all the wires were going to this building and that building, and it looked so funny how they did that. That's why, and we were working on that, and I don't remember how we got out of there again or why we got out. But we lasted it out. That's when Christmas came, I guess, too, about that time.
Yep.
But we didn't have a lot of food. I wrote home one time, I think. It was around Christmas, and I says, my Christmas is over here. I was sitting there, we were raining in a little hut over us, And I was comparing Christmas at home to Christmas where I was here. And I didn't have any lights, didn't have any didn't have any cooking tools, didn't have any Christmas music, didn't have anything. So all we had was probably some K rations, and I know we didn't have turkey for Christmas, I do know that. Yeah, they couldn't get around. Skies were dark. Americans couldn't fly. You know, so I remember too when they started snowing so bad. At night, it snowed so bad, and the next morning, we were next to a tank outfit, and they whitewashed those tanks at night. That's what they told us they did, because they're all white the next day, because they wanted to fit in with the snow the next morning. I don't know what they put on those tanks, but they were white.
Right. Okay. Now, sort of after Christmas, then, are you kind of on the move again and out, just continuing to work?
Oh yeah.
Okay. How hard was it to work? Because parts of that winter were pretty cold. How hard was it?
It was. Snow deep, and then the Americans didn't think that they was going to go on any further, so they didn't have a lot of supplies, and guys were running out of boots and socks and everything. They just didn't have it. Not long underwear or anything. And
were men in your unit getting sick? Were they getting frostbite or things like that?
Oh yeah, a lot of frostbite. And some of the guys that had frostbite, they were really hurt, and they didn't know if their toes were going to come back again. And a friend of mine in Allendale had that. He has the whole front of his foot there was frostbitten. And when they were discharged, they put them on some kind of a pension, you know, or whatever they called it,
right?
Just to get them by. No, I didn't have any frostbite that I know, but my feet were cold, always wet. I remember we tried to get out of the rain one night. This wasn't there, but I can't remember exactly where it was. We found this little old shack, you know. I don't even know what it was for. It's probably a part of a house. We got in there, and we were going to sleep there that night. And there wasn't any room in there to sleep. There was less room than what we needed to put the guys on. And I said, oh, nobody's using this dining room table. I'm going to sleep on there. And I did. Well, I was sleepy, I guess.
Right. Okay. Now, after the Bulge and so forth, Americans are counterattacking. Do you spend any time just in one place for a while after that, or are you always moving?
Mainly we were always moving. We were working for this outfit, and this wanted to be, and they wanted to rehabilitate some cables, which they did when they crossed the Rhine River at Remagen. They got this big German cable that was under there. They didn't have too many of those, and the Americans got that. And they used that for a long time from one side to the other. Well, our outfit got a hold of that cable. We had some cable splicers. They were tying that all together and repairing it. They found both ends where it came out, you know, so they used it. Well, they made good use of German cable.
All right. Now, as you moved into Germany, did that look any different than Belgium did or France did?
Not really. In Germany, on the hills, so you could see a lot of more grapevine where we were anyway. Because when they got to the river, there was lots of going up the hill, and there were a lot of grapevines on them hills. Okay. It really was.
Okay. Now, as you're going through these different places, do you get much of a look at any of the civilian population from one place to the next?
Oh yeah. Some of the guys that could speak French, they could correspond with these people, and they did too. If they stopped, and we had some of these towns when you wanted to go through towards last, there were so many vehicles. American vehicles that want to go this way, and some want to go that way. And one of our medics, we were assigned a medic. We had him, and I don't know where he got this. He got a siren. He found a siren somewhere. He put that on the back of our vehicle. And in the evening, if we wanted to go through that town, and want to get through in a hurry, crank that old thing up, siren. And, you know, MPs would say, well, get out of the way, let those guys through. Oh, we did it too. I thought that was kind of funny, but it worked.
Now, did you have any contact with the Germans once you got into Germany?
They had big signs out, no contacts with the Germans. But that didn't last. Shucks, I bet it lasted 2 hours. They were back at it again.
Now, once you got across the Rhine, where did you go? Where did you wind up by the end of the war in Europe?
Well, to cross the Rhine, we had to cross it at Remagen, where the train, train.
The train, yeah, rail bridge had been captured.
Rail bridge, yeah. And of course, the Americans captured that thing. I give them guys a lot of credit going out there and going to the other end and dismantling some of those wires that the Germans had. And I often wondered what happened to those Germans that let that all go by. Were they drunk or what? And if they were drunk, they probably got shot, and I don't know. But, yeah, lots of stuff going. Excuse me. Wet my whistle a little bit here, too. Yeah, we crossed the bridge at Remagen probably 3-4 days after they captured that. Then I think it's about 9 days when it fell in, something like that.
Yep.
And when we crossed it too, they had MPs on it, and they were always saying, keep going, don't stop, because once they stop, that put a lot of stress on that bridge to start up again.
Yeah.
They said, keep moving. I guess they did too. It took quite a while for that broke in.
Right. But by then they had pontoon bridges across
Oh
and
man,
all
they
that.
got pontoons right away. I think they had more stuff crossing there.
After you were across then, where did you go?
Now, where was our infantry and our artillery? I can't remember those German names
Okay.
for towns.
Do you have a general sense that you went south into Germany or just east or north?
We went right into Germany. We didn't go south or east.
Okay. And then did you kind of keep moving until the Germans surrendered, or what happened?
We did. In fact, when Germans surrendered, we were in Czechoslovakia.
Okay.
And we don't know why they sent a lot of people, our troops into Czechoslovakia. Was there going to be some disturbances afterwards, or why? We never know. But I remember the little town we were at and so on. That's where we left. But I was going to say something about that little town. Now it kind of escaped me. Well,
Okay. Well, did the locals give you any kind of reception or welcome when you got there, or?
Oh no, not in Germany. They didn't.
Well, how about Czechoslovakia?
Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
We were kind of separated. We didn't, and there were people going, troops coming, and when I got into Czechoslovakia with our outfit, we had this big 32 signal on the front there, you know, and on the other bumper there's a 33rd signal that said, and I thought, oh, my cousin is in that outfit. So I found out where they were at, and when we got there, Andy just had left, so I never contacted him again. So that was kind of interesting. I thought maybe I'd catch up with him.
Now, did you stay in Europe very long after the surrender, or did they move you out?
They moved us out pretty quick. And they sent us down to Marseille, France, and that took us quite a while to go from Czechoslovakia all through France. Just had a convoy, you know, one outfit after another.
Right.
And we'd bivouac at night or sack in somewhere, you know, and next morning take off again. So that took us quite a while to get there, and that was not a fun trip either. Nasty weather, different things. We got into, on the way down there, we crossed a little creek or a river. I don't know, it's getting dark, I don't know how big it was. But there was a sign on the end of it. It said, this bridge built by the 693rd engineers, excuse me. And I thought, oh, my brother-in-law's in that outfit. I wonder if they stopped. We stopped there too, and across the river is where that outfit was staying. And I finally wiggled a way out from an officer to get a Jeep at night. They didn't normally do that. But my brother-in-law's on the other side, and he gave me a driver. He knew me too. He trusted me, I think anyway. He gave me a driver, and I went over there and I looked him up. So he was quite surprised, and I was too, getting way over there.
Now, did you work with basically the same squad or the same group of men the whole way through?
Yeah, normally, yeah.
Okay. And what sort of people were they, or do you remember any of them distinctly?
No, not really. They were just average guys, you know, nice guys, I always thought, because being in the Army like that, you almost had to be nice, a little bit anyway.
Right. Okay. Now they get you down to Marseille, and then what happens from there?
We got to Marseille, and then we had a few days off. We could monkey around. We set up camp. And then this fellow that I missed over there in Czechoslovakia, that was in the 33rd, my cousin, I met him over in Marseille. And we used to go out to the rifle range. We had, I don't know where we borrowed these 45s. We both had one. We get a lot of ammunition, and we go out to the range and shoot there every other day or something. No, we didn't have it too bad there. We didn't do any training there at all. We just were waiting for a ship.
And then what kind of ship do you get?
It was a big one. It held, what did that have? 5,000 soldiers? I mean,
was it a converted liner or just a troop ship? Or?
It was, I think it was a troop ship because it had everything on there for troops. But it held a lot. And besides that, we had 500 Marines on there. And then when we went through Panama Canal, they picked up some more sailors for some reason. And we always kid those sailors. He said, well, you're not going to tell us what to do because we got more time on the water than you have. We kind of chided them a little bit, you know.
So you didn't make port in the U.S. on the way over? They just took you out across the Atlantic and into the Caribbean?
I think it was July 2 when we boarded ship, and then we had to wait a while. And besides that, you couldn't send any mail out ahead of time either, so that was no-nos, because they wouldn't send it. And then on July 2, I think we left port at Marseille, all ready to go. And we didn't even know where we were going at that time. But I think in the records that I have back home, I think it was when we went through the Rock of Gibraltar, then we found out we were headed for Okinawa.
Okay.
We didn't even know where Okinawa was. Could have been near New York, far as we're concerned. Okinawa was that landing point they were going to have in Japan. Okinawa was about, 400 or 500 miles south of Japan. But when we got there, I never saw so much devastation in all my life. It was nothing. Those poor people, some of them, civilians, would come out of the hills in these bunkers, they had been in there for how many days while the Americans were just obliterating that place. It was bad.
Because according to the unit history, you got there about September 1st or thereabouts. So it's after the war's over that Japan has surrendered.
Yep.
And then did you have to go to work rebuilding communication lines? Or?
We did some for some outfits that were there already, American outfits.
Right.
We did their work for them. And I got a picture home. There were several outfits there too. They had a pole there, and every outfit go up there, tie it on, go this way. And then another outfit come along, and every time they did that pole, lean a little more. And I got a picture of that. That pole's about sitting like that, all these cables on it. It was really comical. But I always said that was our headquarters.
All right. That must have been a very long sea voyage, though, to get from
58 days on the water.
Wow.
That's 2 months.
Yeah. And how did you spend your time when you were doing all that?
Well, we didn't have a lot of room. We could exercise a little bit, but you could find a place to do that. But once in a while, I know where I used to go was there was something overhanging on the ship. And underneath there, I could lay under there. And it was fairly nice. I could read under there and everything. So that's where I spent a lot of time. But what else? I didn't want to go down. I wouldn't go down in the hole of a ship. That's no fun down there. Once in a while on a Saturday or Friday night, they'd have a little program, some of the guys that could do it, and had little boxing matches and stuff. But I don't remember, that seemed like a long time.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got on that ship, one of our officers, I think it was a major or whatever, he volunteered us to work KP on that ship. They called it something besides KP.
Right.
He volunteered us to do that, and we just got out. We hated it over there in the States, and they put us on there. But what was so nice about it, where they were feeding down below, it was perfect down there. They fed all these lines, and what you had to do is keep all the silverware lined up and everything, and you'd feed all these guys and take turns, but then you got to take a shower in fresh water. That was really nice. But the guys were so disgusted when they heard that. They say, you want to do that? We did that enough. And then we found out how nice it was. And you know what we did? Volunteered for the whole way, and we kept it too. That was nice.
Yeah.
That was nice.
And did you get a chance to get sort of more food or the food you wanted?
Oh,
just 'cause
yeah.
you were right there? Yeah.
I remember one time when we was feeding, they were fed 4 kinds of beans. Green beans, navy beans, I don't know what all kinds of beans.
Probably limas. Yeah.
Limas, probably. So that was good.
Okay.
Was
Now,
good.
when they had sent you to Okinawa, was the idea that you were going to assist the invasion of Japan?
No, that was the
original plan?
idea. In fact, I don't know just how this went, but just before we got there, maybe we were in port already. I think probably we were. They put us into the 147th Infantry Division. They tied us to that. And I don't know for what reason. Maybe that's the outfit we're going to go with. I don't know. Or maybe it was an outfit that was going to go home and some of our guys had enough points. But that was kind of odd getting into the 47th Infantry Division. Even when I read some of this stuff, it's got that on there. 147th Infantry. Here it is on this one. Like right under Morris Hinken there.
Yeah. It refers, yeah. Yeah, Service Company 147th Infantry. So conceivably, they might even have broken up your unit and assigned different squads to different units
Yeah,
to be their
it could have been.
communications units. Yeah.
Well, once we got there and we heard it was Japan surrendered, we didn't make any difference. We was in the 147th
Right.
or paratroopers.
Now, how long did you stay in Okinawa before you got to go home?
That's a good question because I never can remember that, or maybe I never knew. We boarded ship and headed for the States. And it took, I don't remember how many days, but that also was a little bit bad weather. But we finally did wind up at Tacoma, Washington. And that's where we landed, and we landed Christmas Eve. Can you imagine that? When I'm back in my homeland at Christmas Eve. I don't know if we went out and kissed the ground or not, but I know there was a little snow on the ground. But then on the next day, Christmas Day, there was a whole lot of cars lined up on the docks. And what those cars were, they wanted to take a couple, maybe 2, 3 in their car, and take them home for Christmas.
Yeah.
And that was nice, so we did that too. And I thought, oh, that is really neat. This couple had 2 little kids. That was really fun after all that time. And I think probably the next day or a couple, we all would go into town. We'd all ask for the biggest steak you got. And that's probably what we got too, because they probably knew about all this, and we probably had a lot of that on hand. That was kind of fun. It was.
And then pretty quickly, do they send you home and discharge you, or?
We went, they processed at Tacoma, Washington. And the funny part of it is, I got to tell you about this. Tacoma, Washington, when we were there, I was in the bathroom, or whatever we called it there. Anyway, I set my little container of all my stuff, my little bag. I put it on the shelf there, and I don't know what I did, and I came back, and it was gone. And that was the first thing that was stolen for all the time that I left home. Nobody ever stole anything in the Army, not around where we were. It'd really get it. And that was so funny that I lost that. And I had some nice stuff in there too. I had a nice star that we took off in a Japanese officer. And I think I had that in there, otherwise somebody lifted it off of me. But that was gone, and a few other trinkets that I really wanted to keep, but they were gone too. So that's...
So once they process you, do they discharge you there, or do they send you back somewhere else? Or?
Tacoma, Washington, then we had to cross the whole United States almost to get to Fort Sheridan.
Okay.
And that's where they process here, and then over there I don't know what they did. They paid us some money, I guess, and all that stuff, and then they sent us home. But it took a long time to get to Tacoma, Washington, over the Rockies to get to there, and on a train. I didn't smoke, but most of the other guys did, and that thing was just blue inside, and man, I couldn't hardly take it anymore because you couldn't open the window because it was too cold up there and snowing.
All right.
Yep.
Now, what did you do then after you got home? It's all over now.
Oh, yeah. Well, what did I do? I didn't go back to work right away because we could get some weekly money. If you didn't, I didn't have a way to get to work, no car. I sold my car to my brother when I left the States, figuring I'd buy a new one when I got home, but that didn't happen either. So I didn't have a car to go to work. And so whatever they paid me, I can't remember what it was.
I think they called it the 5220 Club, like $20 a week for like up to a year.
Whatever it was. So, but that probably lasted a month or two, and then I finally got a vehicle and I could go to work. So I went right back to Michigan Bell again. So that's where I worked, and I was there for a while, and I had some different jobs. I didn't stay as a lineman, and I went to installation, repair, and then I went to be an inspector for a while, and different things like that. And that was my job at Michigan Bell. And what I liked about it, all these jobs, I liked them, but what I liked, I got into Grand Haven, and they needed a guy inside in the toll room. And the guy left, and here they are without one, and they had to get one out of the group. So I got elected. I think I had probably more training than what the rest of them did. So I got into side, and that was a nice job. I mean, out of the weather, everything.
All right. Now, if you look back at the experience you had in the Army, what kind of effect do you think that had on you, or what did you learn from it?
Well, I know between when they went in and where I went out, I think I matured a little bit. I could take on more responsibility, because when you get to be a master sergeant, that's your baby, you know, the pontoons. So, yeah, I could handle that, but I would have never handled that when I left. No, it's, no way. But all this training we had, I could handle a lot.
And when you think back to the time that you spent in the service, are there other particular memories or things that tend to come back to you a lot that you can think of that you haven't brought into the story here yet?
Boy, let's see. Trying to run over, where was I?
That's a good idea. Check the notes.
I've got, yeah, these notes. There's probably some in this here that. Oh, months. When we were in Germany, I gotta tell you about that. The Germans already had these Autobahns, you know, and you could fly on those things. And they also had these clover leaves. And we going to go to, where was it, prisoner of war, or a concentration camp. That one missed me. But anyway, we were headed for that. Because our outfit was going to be camped there, and that's where we were supposed to rendezvous. So we was going down this road, and what happened, I guess we got on one of these clover leaves, didn't know what was going on, and we kept on going. And we thought, now, where do we cross this river here? And we got all the way up into Maastricht, Holland. That's a long way.
Yeah.
It was on the other side of the river. There was no way to cross, you know. We kept on going because we didn't know where we are. Nobody had a compass or anything. So we got into Maastricht that night, and I think it's Dutch underground or whatever it was. They all had dark uniforms on. They stopped us at that bridge, and it was kind of dark. We couldn't see them, and they couldn't really see us, and they stopped us. But we couldn't talk Dutch, none of us. So we had to go hands, and they had a couple of flashlights and so, and after they finally were satisfied we were American troops, and they let us go. Then we crossed the bridge, and then we had to go back on the other side of the river. And that took us forever. We got here about 10:30 at night back where we were supposed to be. And the captain, he was furious. Where have you been? He thought we were goofing off, I guess, or something. But then he had to get out the cooks and feed us yet too that night, because that's our responsibility. We hadn't had any food yet, so that was a funny one. That's yeah, that's lots of history. I usually could talk for days, but right now I even took a map along of Germany. But this Germany map is all in German, so you can't really talk it. I can't even find my Remagen on this thing, but I know we.
Well, Remagen is a relatively small town, so.
Oh yeah, it is. I got a picture of it when we were in town, a cardboard picture, postal card. I was looking down on the town, and you could see the bridge over there. Yeah, that wasn't a very big town. But that's where the bridge was, I guess, probably one of the narrowest places, and there was rock foundations on both sides, and that one end that went into this hill, and then they made a big turn under there. That must have been hard to put all that rock out of there. Yeah. Oh, this cemetery too. I was so impressed when we went back to visit all this one time. The reason we went back, my son-in-law, my daughter was over, my son-in-law, he was a basketball player for Calvin, and he's quite tall. He went over there to play in the German league for one year. He went over there, and he got to be the center for Heidelberg. And then kids said, "Oh, you got to come over here now. The team has got a car. We can use it as long as we want to." And they had a whole lot of. We could stay in their apartment.
Right.
We did too. Yeah, we really had it nice.
And then you mentioned a cemetery. Is it the one?
Yeah. Oh, that's what I was going to. A cemetery too. That nice cemetery. Where have you been back there at all?
To Normandy?
Cemetery too. Yeah, that cemetery. When you read how many people are in there, it shocks you. They're not alive. Oh, here's one little article on it. There's 9,386 American war dead buried here. 307 of the headstones mark the graves as unknowns. The remains of approximately 14,000 others originally buried in the area were sent home by the request of their families. And there are also buried here, side by side, a father and a son. And 33 instances of two brothers side by side. That is something, isn't it? But they keep that up so nice. Oh, man, I loved it over there.
All right. Well, we don't need to make you kind of go leaf through all of this stuff too long here. I think you've done a very good job for us here. So I'd just like to thank you for coming and talking to me today.